You are on tips and streams with your host, Coca.
What's good, folks? Koken here, locked in and geared up to break down 4 NBA showdowns that are about to crank up the temperature. Strap in, because we're rolling straight into the action. The first prediction for today's NBA games is for the match between the Magic and the Knicks. When I look at this matchup, I see 2 teams heading into Madison Square Garden with completely different kinds of momentum. And trust me, after more than 3 decades of watching NBA basketball, I've learned that the Garden has a rhythm of its own, especially when the Knicks feel like they've got something to prove. And tonight, they absolutely do. New York has been one of the hottest teams in the league over the past couple of weeks. I've watched them push the pace, tighten the screws defensively, and attack with an offensive flow that finally feels natural. That 146-112 demolition job against Utah told me everything I needed to know about where this squad's head is at. Brunson looked like he was out there running a masterclass, and Towns showed once again why his versatility is such a weapon, whether he's stretching the floor or eating space on the glass. And once guys like Miles McBride start knocking down threes off the bench, that's when you really see the full depth of this roster. Now, I'm not ignoring Orlando. That team competes, and they've been punching above expectations even with lineup disruptions. Franz Wagner continues to grow into a killer, and Banchero's return definitely raises their ceiling, though it also shifts the offensive rhythm that was working nicely when Bane took over as the primary engine. I like their toughness, I respect their defensive identity, and I've seen them grind out wins even when shots aren't falling. That win over Miami showed me that they don't shy away from late-game pressure, but here's where I draw the line. Orlando has already beaten the Knicks twice this season. And as someone who's been around this league long enough, I'll tell you exactly how teams usually respond to that in the NBA. They circle the date on the calendar. They wait. They lock in. And when they finally get that opponent back in their building, they come out with something different in their chest. New York at home has been a straight-up problem for every team walking into the Garden. The crowd feeds the energy, and the Knicks feed off the crowd. When they get rolling early, like that absurd 23-0 run against Utah, the building becomes one of the toughest places to weather a storm. The Knicks offense is humming, the defense is active on every switch, and the supporting cast is doing exactly what a contender-level bench should be doing. Meanwhile, Orlando's main path to keeping this close is slowing the pace, dominating the interior, and living at the line. But looking at the matchups, New York has the size, the rebounding, and the perimeter efficiency to punch right through that strategy. And if this game starts tilting toward a battle of half-court shot creation, that's where Brunson takes over and where Orlando usually struggles to keep the scoreboard moving. I'm not saying Orlando won't throw a few punches, they always do. But this spot feels tailor-made for a Knicks response game. After dropping 2 straight to this Magic team, I expect New York to come in focused, aggressive, and ready to put this narrative to bed. My prediction, I'm riding with the Knicks to cover the 3-point spread at home. Today's second prediction is for the game between the Boston Celtics and Toronto Raptors. When I look at this matchup between the Celtics and Raptors, I see 2 teams arriving from completely opposite highways. Boston is rolling into Toronto like a squad that finally found its identity without Tatum, leaning on Brown's shot making, White's rhythm from deep, and a defensive backbone that has tightened up with every game. Meanwhile, Toronto walks in looking like a team searching for its groove again after that hot mid-season burst fizzled out. What jumps off the screen for me right away is the pace. These 2 teams aren't trying to run anybody out of the gym. In fact, they play some of the slowest basketball in the entire league. And as someone who's been watching NBA tempo trends for decades, slow pace plus physical half-court play usually tells me that the scoreboard isn't going to creep too high. Toronto likes to grind possessions, and Boston is sitting at the bottom of the league in pace, which fits perfectly into the way they defend, make you work deep into the clock, switch everything, and force you into mid-range bailouts. Toronto at home is usually a tougher out, but right now their offense feels out of sync. When a team has one guy cooking while everyone else is cold, it's usually a sign of spacing issues or rhythm problems, and I saw both of those in their recent losses. The Hornets beating them the way they did wasn't just a bad shooting night. It was a reminder that Toronto's half-court flow isn't clicking the way it did during that big winning stretch. If they get stuck in another slow offensive start, Boston is the type of team that will choke the air out of the game. Boston's current run has been impressive because they're not just scoring, they're controlling games with their defense. When a team jumps out early the way they did against the Lakers, it tells me their game plan execution is sharp. Brown is attacking the rim with confidence, White's vision is setting the tone, and the role players are stepping into shots without hesitation. But Boston isn't built to play track meet basketball on the road. When these two link up, the games almost always tighten up and lean defensive. And here's the piece that really pushes me toward the total. The history between these two teams in Toronto has been one long advertisement for the under. Every time they meet at Scotiabank Arena, the rhythm slows to a crawl, the defenses lock in, and the game becomes more about shot quality than shot quantity. Even when Boston has come in hot, this matchup tends to drag the pace down. So to me, this isn't about whether Boston covers the short line, even though I do think they have the tools to win the game. It's about the flow of the matchup, the styles, the injuries, the pace, the recent form. Everything here screams a lower scoring duel. My prediction, I expect Boston to win and cover the 2.5 point spread, but that's not my play. My play is the total points staying under 227.5. I've got a strange instinct about this one, the kind of instinct you only develop after decades of watching NBA momentum shifts. I'm riding with the under here, and honestly, I don't even see this game breaking 220 points. The third prediction for today is for the game between the Denver Nuggets and Charlotte Hornets. What's up, guys? It's Koken from Tips and Streams, and this one is a little different. I'm not messing with the full game here. I'm zoning in on the first 24 minutes in Charlotte, where the Hornets host the Denver Nuggets. On paper, Denver is the clear heavyweight. Nikola Jokic is playing like he's bored with being great, dropping 40 with ease, flirting with triple-doubles every night, and climbing the all-time assist ladder like it's nothing. The Nuggets' offense is rolling. They just came off a wild comeback against Atlanta, where they exploded after halftime and turned a huge deficit into a win. When they flip that switch, they look unstoppable. But there's another side to this Denver story. Defensively, they've been leaking points. Over the last stretch, they've been giving up well over 120 per night, and you can see they're not fully locked in on that end. Without Aaron Gordon and Christian Braun, the perimeter and help defense just don't have the same bite. At the rim and in that mid-range area, you can attack them, and teams have been doing it successfully. That matters a lot for a spot like this in the middle of an extended road trip. Now let's talk about Charlotte. The Hornets are the definition of a roller coaster. Some nights they look like a legit young, hungry squad, and other nights they look like they just met in the parking lot. But lately, they've shown some life. 3 wins in their last 5, including a statement blowout over Toronto, where they completely took over the second and fourth quarter and buried the Raptors. That game reminded everyone that, when they're locked in, this team can hoop. I really like what the young guys are bringing. Con Newpel is playing beyond his age, knocking down shots and getting to the line with that smooth touch. Tidjane Salon came back from injury and instantly brought energy and scoring off the bench. Add Miles Bridges, Brandon Miller, and the rest of their core, and you've got a group that can run, rebound, and punch back when a team tries to hit them early. Even with key names missing, Charlotte has found a way to compete. And here's the key thing for my angle. The Hornets tend to start games well, for long stretches. Up until late in the third quarter, they look like they belong on the floor with anyone. The collapses usually come later, when the rotations tighten, legs get heavy, and the decision-making falls apart. That's why I don't want any part of a full-game handicap with this squad. I've seen that movie too many times. They hang, they fight, and then everything melts down in the last 12 minutes. Now put that next to Denver's situation. The Nuggets are on an East Coast swing, coming off an emotional 1-point win where they had to burn a lot of energy to come back from a massive deficit. They know they're the better team, they know Jokic can bail them out, and they've got another game waiting for them after this one. That is the perfect recipe for a slow, sleepy start, especially on the defensive end. Charlotte at home has been much more trustworthy against the number. They feed off their crowd, they run the floor, and they can get hot in a hurry. Against a Denver defense that hasn't exactly been snarling lately, I expect the Hornets to attack the paint, live on drives, and test that soft interior early. Even if Jokic dominates, I do not need the Hornets to control the game. I just need them to keep it respectable through halftime. So for me, the edge is very clear. I do not want to lay a big number with Denver for the full game on the road, and I do not trust Charlotte to survive the usual late-game chaos. I'm isolating the window where the Hornets usually look like a real basketball team. My prediction, I'm playing Charlotte Hornets plus 7 points in the first half against the Denver Nuggets. I think the Nuggets eventually find a way to win, but in the first 24 minutes, I expect the Hornets to show up, compete, and keep this thing tight enough to cash that first half spread. Today's last prediction is for the match between the Warriors and the Bulls. When I look at this matchup, I see two teams arriving from completely different emotional planets. Golden State is dragging itself into Chicago with a roster that looks more like a patchwork quilt than a contending team. No Steph. No Jimmy Butler. Draymond banged up. Key rotation guys are questionable. And to make matters worse, they're stepping onto the floor on the second night of a back-to-back after having to claw through a comeback just to survive Cleveland. That's a brutal turnaround for an older squad that's already been sputtering all season. And trust me, I know the Warriors' reputation. They've owned Chicago in this building for years. But this is not that Warriors team. Without Steph orchestrating the entire orchestra, this offense falls flat. They stop pushing the tempo, the spacing disappears, and suddenly it's just a bunch of guys hoping someone gets hot. Their own numbers tell the story. When Steph sits, they slide into one of the weakest attacks in the league, and they struggle to generate clean looks beyond the arc. That's not the Golden State we grew up watching. The Bulls, meanwhile, are not exactly rolling. I've watched them look lost, disconnected, and downright sloppy in recent games. But even in their darkest stretches, this team plays different when they're inside the United Center. Kobe White returning gives this group a legit spark. The guy has been hooping all season, and his shot creation opens the floor for everyone else. Josh Giddey is quietly stacking up monster stat lines too, flirting with triple-double production on most nights. And with Vucevic anchoring the middle, they at least have a stable inside presence that Golden State doesn't have right now. Do the Bulls have flaws? Absolutely. But in this spot, I'm looking at who has more ways to win tonight, and it's Chicago. The Warriors are running on fumes, leaning on role players who just had to play heavy minutes last night, and they haven't shown they can sustain success when Curry is out. Their offense becomes predictable, their defense loses bite, and their late-game execution suddenly looks fragile. Chicago, for all the chaos, still has enough shot-making, enough rebounding, and enough energy to protect their home floor against a tired opponent. They're desperate, they're hungry, and this is the kind of matchup where teams in a slump wake up. So for me, I'm rolling with the home side here. The Bulls might not be world beaters right now, but against a Warriors squad without its stars and running on tired legs, I like their chances to cover the short number. My prediction, I'm taking the Bulls to cover the 2-point spread tonight.